The rain pattered on the tin roof of the garage where Sean Kelly was working on plans for a new project. The clock showed the beginning of 10 a Friday evening, which he was used to spending at home with beer and TV. But today he lingered, trying to get the morning argument with Carrie out of his head. She left again on business, saying something vague about work, although her shift at the office had long ended. Sean gritted his teeth, put down his pencil, and reached for a pack of cigarettes when his phone vibrated on the wooden table. "Kelly," he muttered, raising the phone to his ear. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, sharp, like a hammer blow. "Mr. Sean Kelly, this is Officer Davis, Illinois State Police. Are you Carrie Kelly's husband?" Sean straightened up, his hand still holding the cigarette. The heart beats once, then again, faster. "Yes, it's me. What's happened?" "Sir, your wife had an accident. Highway 294, around 9 p.m. her car crashed into a bump stop. She is alive, but in serious condition. Now at St. Joseph's Hospital. You better come." The cop's words sank into my head like nails. Sean clutched the phone until his knuckles turned white. What the hell was she doing on 294? This is not her way at all. His voice broke, but he immediately pulled himself together. "Is she okay? Be direct." "She's in a coma, sir. The injuries are serious. Come quickly, the doctors will explain everything." The line went dead. Sean threw the phone on the table, grabbed the keys to the truck, and ran out into the rain. Thoughts were spinning like wheels on wet asphalt. Highway 294. It's 40 miles from their home in the Chicago suburbs. Carrie never went there neither to work, nor to see friends, nor to the shops. Something was wrong, but he pushed those thoughts away as he started the engine. "She's alive, that's the main thing," he told himself as he pulled out onto the road. The journey to the hospital took 20 minutes, but seemed like an eternity. The rain pelted the windshield wipers squeaked, and Sean gripped the steering wheel, scrolling through their morning. Carrie stood at the stove, frying eggs, but was silent, as if he was an empty place. He asked why she came back late again yesterday, and she said, "Sean, stop questioning me. I'm a grown girl, I can take care of myself. I'm not interrogating Carrie. I just want to know where my wife is when I'm not at home," he replied, trying not to break down. She always knew how to turn things around in such a way that he felt guilty. "I was late to work." "There's a lot to do," she snapped, throwing the plate of food on the table. "Eat and don't start, I have a hard day ahead." He said nothing, swallowed his breakfast, and went into the garage. Sean was used to trusting her 12 years of marriage, damn it. She was his rock, the girl he plucked from a seedy bar when she was 23 and he was 25. He built their lives like he built houses, brick by brick from scratch. But over the past couple of years, she has slipped away more and more often, either work, then friends, or "I need to clear my head." Sean blamed himself. Not enough attention, too much work. Maybe I should have talked to her more. Now this accident. He pressed the gas harder. St. Joseph's Hospital smelled of antiseptic and anxiety. Sean burst into the emergency room, soaked to the skin, and barked at the first nurse he saw. "Carrie Kelly, where is she?" "I'm her husband." "Calm down, sir." The woman raised her hands. "Intensive care unit, 3rd floor. They are waiting for you." Sean rushed towards the elevator, ignoring her. "Don't run." My head was buzzing. "She's alive, she's alive." The elevator opened, and he nearly crashed into a uniformed cop, young and tired-eyed. "Are you Kelly?" The officer stepped forward. "I'm Davis. I called you." "Where is she?" Sean clenched his fists. "What's wrong with her?" "Let's go." Davis led him down the corridor. "The car is trashed. Rescuers cut her out. She was alone. There were no witnesses. Most likely, she lost control on a wet road. No alcohol was found in the blood, but we are still checking." On 294th, Sean stopped. "She doesn't go there. Never." "What is this? A mistake?" "No mistake, sir. Honda Civic, license plate is yours. Her bag and documents are inside." Sean nodded, although everything was boiling inside. He didn't want to argue with the cop, he needed to see her. Davis led him to the glass door of the intensive care unit and knocked. The doctor came out, a balding man of about 50 in a green coat. "Mr. Kelly, I'm Dr. Ramirez. Your wife is in critical condition. Spinal fracture, head injury. She's in a coma and," he hesitated, "there's little chance. If he comes out of a coma, paralysis is almost inevitable." Sean stared at him. The doctor's words came through slowly, as if through cotton wool. "Paralysis? Are you serious?" His voice trembled, but he immediately straightened up. "She'll pull through. She's strong. We're doing everything we can," Ramirez sighed. "You can see her, but not for long." Sean stood at the glass of the intensive care unit, looking at the motionless Carrie, and that summer 12 years ago when it all started came back to mind. He could almost hear her laugh, that high-pitched, slightly hoarse laugh that cut through the noise of the bar on the south side of Chicago. Then he was 25, he had just gotten a job at a construction site, and after his shift, he went for a drink with the guys. The bar was shabby, sticky floors, the smell of beer and cigarettes, a couple of shabby pool tables. Sean didn't like places like this, but his partner, Tony, dragged him there, promising to relax after a week in the heat. "Come on, Kelly, stop whining." Tony patted him on the shoulder, putting the beer on the counter. "What are you, a monk? Have a drink and look at the girls." "I didn't come here for the girls," Sean muttered, but took the beer. He was not one of those who seek adventure, work, home, sleep, and so on in a circle. But that evening, everything did not go according to plan. Carrie appeared from behind the counter as if emerging from smoke. She was 23, her hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, a black t-shirt hugged her thin shoulders, and she was holding a tray of empty bottles in her hands. She worked as a bartender, and Sean immediately noticed how she maneuvered between drunken men, kicking back at their jokes with a sharp tongue. "Hey, beauty, pour me some more," shouted a fat man in a checkered shirt, slamming the counter. "Pour yourself a drink if your hands haven't fallen off," she said without turning around, and the crowd laughed. Sean grinned into his mug. The girl clearly knew how to stand up for herself. But then the chaos began. Some guy healthy, with greasy hair, clung to her at the farm table. Sean saw him grab her wrist as she placed the whiskey in front of him. "Come on, baby, sit with me," he muttered, pulling her towards him. Carrie pulled away, but the guy didn't lag behind. "Fuck off, moron, before I shove a glass down your throat," she barked, but her voice trembled. The crowd fell silent, and the guy stood up, towering over her. "You'll dance for me again." He stepped closer, and then Sean put down his beer. He didn't think, didn't plan, he just moved across the hall. Tony grabbed his sleeve. "Kelly, where are you going?" "It's none of your business. It's mine when a girl is offended," Sean snapped, shaking off his hand. He walked up to the table and stood between Carrie and the man. "Listen, buddy," she said to fuck off. Sean's voice was even, but there was a ring of steel in it. "Go ahead and drink, or you'll be counting your teeth on the floor." The guy bared his teeth, but Sean was taller and broader in the shoulders. His years in construction had not been in vain. The drunk froze, then spat on the floor and retreated. "Fuck her," he muttered, returning to his chair. The hall began to hum again, as if nothing had happened. Carrie looked at Sean, narrowing her eyes as if checking to see if he was joking. "I could handle it myself," she said, but her lips twitched into a smile. "I believe," Sean shrugged, "I just sped up the process." She snorted as she put the tray away. "Okay, hero. Beer at my expense. What's your name?" "Sean. Sean Kelly." "Carrie," she extended her hand. Her palm was warm and slightly sticky from the beer glasses. "Thank you for not letting that freak ruin my evening." He nodded, returned to the counter, but spent the entire evening catching her eye. She winked at him as she put down the beer, and towards the end of the shift, she sat down next to him with a bottle in her hand. "You're not like these people, Sean Kelly," she said, taking a sip. "What did you forget in this hole?" "I worked nearby and came in with my buddy." He nodded at Tony, who was already nodding off. "How are you here?" "We need money," she shrugged. My mother is sick, my sister is small, and I am the eldest. So I'm spinning. But I'm not complaining, I'm used to it. Sean listened to her speak quickly, with a slight hoarseness, and felt that she was not lying. She had strength, but also weariness, which she hid behind a smile. They talked until closing time, until the bartender shouted, "Go home, Carrie." "Let's go, I'll give you a ride," Sean suggested, getting up. "It's night, it's raining, and you're alone." "I'm not a princess, I'll get there myself." She waved her off, but he insisted. "Don't argue. My pickup is at the entrance." She rolled her eyes, but went with him. In the car, she turned on the radio, hummed something under her breath, and then turned to him. "You know, Sean Kelly, you're like a knight from books. He pulled me out of the clutches of the dragon." She laughed, and he blushed like a boy. "Don't exaggerate," he muttered, but her laughter was contagious. "No, seriously. You're normal, not like those assholes at the bar. Maybe we'll see you again?" "Maybe," he smiled for the first time that evening. "Where should I drop you off?" "At the old house on the corner of 5th. And write down my number, Knight. What if I get into trouble again?" He recorded it, and when she jumped out of the car, shouting, "See you tomorrow," Sean realized that he was missing. The next day he called, invited her for coffee, then again and again. She joked, called him Knight, and he melted like a fool. A month later, they were already living together in his rented apartment, and a year later they got married. Carrie took their lives into her own hands. She decided where to go, what to do, and Sean trusted her because he believed that she was his person. Until today. Sean lifted his hand from the glass, the memory fading. Carrie lay in front of him the same, but different. Bruise on the cheek, tubes, silence. He clenched his fists. "Carrie, what have you done?" he muttered. "Where the hell have you been?" The nurse came in with her bag, a beat-up leather bag he'd given her for their anniversary. "Here are her things," she said quietly. "The cops took the documents, the rest is yours." Sean nodded, took his bag, and sat down on a chair against the wall. He opened the zipper and dumped the contents onto his lap. Wallet, lipstick, house keys, and then a check. Small, crumpled, from Joe's Cafe. Date yesterday, time 1942. And the address, Highway 294, mile 32. He clenched the piece of paper in his fist. "What were you doing there, Carrie?" The voice broke into a whisper. "You said you were going to work." He put the check in his pocket and reached further. Under the wallet is a ticket from a movie theater in Milwaukee, dated today. Sean froze. Milwaukee, it's a 2-hour drive. She has no friends, no family, no work there. Nothing. He turned the ticket over, and on the back was written in pencil, 18 o'clock, J. J? Who is J? Sean walked out into the hallway where Davis was waiting. The cop was smoking electronic cigarettes, blowing steam into the ceiling. "Did you find something?" he asked, noticing the bag in Sean's hands. "Not yet," Sean lied. "Tell me about the accident. What do you know?" "Phew. The car is in a bumper. The engine is soft-boiled. She is alone, without passengers. The speed was higher than normal, but not critical. Rain, wet road, most likely it skidded. No sign of the other car." "Where was she going?" Sean stepped closer. "Is this really the 294th? "Yes, mile 32, direction north. To Milwaukee." Sean nodded, although his stomach tightened. "Milwaukee, ticket. Check. This is not a coincidence." "Can I pick her up?" he asked. "When will she wake up?" "It's to the doctor's." Davis shrugged. "But get ready, it won't be soon. And maybe he won't wake up at all." "She'll wake up," Sean snapped. "I know her." He turned around and walked towards the elevator. The cop shouted after him. "If you remember anything, call me. We're still checking." Sean didn't answer. In the elevator, he took out his receipt and ticket and looked at them under the dim light. He was not a weakling. Life on a construction site taught him to take a punch. But he trusted his wife. He followed her because he loved her. And now this. At home, Sean threw his bag on the table, poured himself some whiskey, and sat down in a chair. The rain kept hitting the windows as if it wanted to break through the glass. He took out Carrie's phone, plugged in the charger, and the screen lit up. Password. 6 digits. He entered their wedding date, it didn't work. Her birthday is passing. No house number either. He threw the phone on the sofa. Carrie, what were you hiding? He growled into the void. Then he stood up, took the keys and the receipt. Joe's was an hour away. He wasn't going to sit and wait. If she was there, someone must know with whom. Sean threw on his jacket, slammed the door, and got into the pickup. The engine growled, the headlights caught the wet road. He didn't know what he would find, but he felt that this was just the beginning. Sean rushed along the night road, casting angry glances at the windshield smeared by the rain. His pickup truck's headlights kept flashing roadside signs, I-294, exit 31, exit 32. Somewhere around here, there must be the same exit that leads to Joe's cafe. My heart was pounding. My hand on the steering wheel was trembling slightly from the rush of thoughts. Officer Davis said it was just a bad weather accident, but Sean felt there was something more complicated going on here. He remembered the receipt he found from this very cafe. The time was 1942. The place was mile 32. And then a ticket from a cinema in Milwaukee. And that strange note, 18 o'clock J. Why J? Who is this J? She didn't even mention anyone with a name starting with J, Sean thought, switching the wipers to a higher setting. The rain did not let up. And why even go to Milwaukee on a Friday night when she's supposed to be hunched over in the office Monday through Friday? Sean frowned, remembering that the day before she had been late at work again. But now was not the time to seethe with jealousy or resentment. He needed to get to the bottom of the truth in order to understand what had been happening to her in recent months. Sean turned onto a ramshackle side road where a faint sign said, Café Joe's 1 mile. Finally, he saw the dim lights of a secluded roadhouse-style building. There was a flashing sign above the crooked roof, Joe's Diner Bar. Partially, the letters did not burn. Sean parked the pickup in an empty gravel parking lot, walked out into the drizzling rain, and shuddered at the sharp gust of wind. Slamming the door, his gaze followed the only car standing at the back entrance, a dark sedan with a dented bumper. It's unlikely that there will be many visitors in this weather, he thought, heading towards the entrance. Sean pushed open the creaky door, and the smell of old grease mixed with coffee hit his nose. Inside, a pair of lamps on long cords burned, casting flickering shadows on the walls, which were covered with yellowing posters and neon beer advertisements. A plump man in a green checkered shirt sat behind the counter, chewing a toothpick and lazily leafing through a newspaper. He wore round glasses that kept slipping down onto the tip of his nose. Good evening, Sean said quietly, although the evening had clearly passed midnight. If you want coffee, sit down, the man muttered, without even looking up from the newspaper. The kitchen is closed, the cook has left. The bar is also no longer open. Sean came closer, leaning his elbows on the counter. I don't need food. I'm looking for information about a woman who may have been here last night. He raised an eyebrow and looked at Sean with an appraising look. Yesterday. It was also raining. There were almost no people. I'm sure you saw someone anyway. Sean pulled the check out of his pocket and unfolded it, trying to show the cafe's logo. Here's the proof. She paid at 1942. Name is Carrie Kelly. Do you remember her? The man took off his glasses, put the newspaper aside, and squinted. And what? Maybe there was some woman here. We have a lot of people coming in. I don't have to keep track of every client. Moreover, I had a hard day. The dishwasher broke down, and the food supply was disrupted. What difference does it make to me who took the coffee here? Sean frowned. Do you have video cameras? Why suddenly? This is not a city diner with a dozen cameras. Here we keep everything simple, and there is no one to steal. The cat made the clients cry. The man spoke coldly, and Sean realized that he couldn't get anything out of it just like that. He took his wallet out of his breast pocket, took out a couple of bills, and placed them on the counter. Listen, buddy, my wife had an accident. She's in a coma. I need to know what happened here, who she was with, what they talked about. This money is for your time and information. The owner of the cafe silently looked at the bills as if weighing whether to take them. Finally, he brushed them away with his palm under the newspaper. Okay, let's sit down. My name is Joe, since you came to my place. You want to know everything I remember. Yes, Sean nodded. And please, no prevarication. Joe glanced toward the back room, then motioned for Sean to sit at a nearby table. He walked around the counter, went behind the partition, and a couple of seconds later returned with 2 glasses and a thermos. He poured some coffee and handed 1 glass to Sean. Then, puffing noisily, he sat down on the chair opposite. Well, yesterday, or rather the day before yesterday, around 8 in the evening, a young woman came in. Dark hair, in a raincoat, wet hood. I also thought, why drag into our outback in such weather? She immediately ordered coffee and asked about Wi-Fi. She said she was waiting for a person. My Wi-Fi is intermittent, but the connection seemed to work. Joe looked away, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. About 15 minutes later, a guy came in. Tall, wearing a gray jacket, the hood pulled over his head. Do you know the name? Sean interrupted. I didn't ask him. I'm not a police officer. Joe shrugged. He sat down at the table with her, and they talked quietly. Then she seemed to raise her voice, but I couldn't understand the words. It was clear that the conversation was tense. She grabbed his hand several times, and he pulled away. Sean clenched his fists. Everything was boiling inside. What did he look like? Facial features, hair, maybe a scar? Tattoo? Yes, I didn't look at him that way to remember everything. Looks like blonde hair, short haircut. Age? Maybe 30, 35. I can't say exactly, our lighting is bad. And the guy tried to sit further away in the corner, as if he didn't want to be seen. Sean took a sip of coffee it burned, and Sean himself did not like drinking coffee on an empty stomach. But I had to somehow come to my senses. What next? Next. She paid. Whether they went out together or not, I don't remember. Looks like he left early. Joe winced and rubbed his forehead. Maybe together. I missed this exact moment because I had to look behind the stove. There was no one else. Could anyone see them? My waitress, Sandra, was on shift. Now she is gone. She will return only in 2 days. Maybe she overheard something. She likes to keep her ears open when talking. But I don't know exactly when it will be. Sean noticed how a shadow of anxiety slid across the man's face, as if the owner of the cafe did not want to go into details, or he was afraid that he would be involved in some story. You see, I have no time for intrigue, Joe said more quietly. I don't want any unnecessary problems. If your wife has an accident, I sympathize, but I can't help you with that. Ask. Sean leaned forward sharply. Yes, I don't think you have anything to do with it. I just want to understand why she should meet in this place if our house is in a completely different direction, and her work is not here either. She said that she was staying in the office, but in the end she ended up with you and was planning to go to Milwaukee. Joe shrugged his shoulders and spread his arms. People are all different. Maybe on business, maybe to see a lover, maybe for something more important. How should I know? This phrase cut Sean like a blade. Lover was a word he himself was afraid to utter. Everything went cold inside him, but he forced himself to keep a strong face. Okay, he said, looking straight into Joe's eyes. Maybe I'll come back when your waitress is there. In the meantime, thanks for your honesty. He stood up and, without turning around, left the cafe. The rain did not let up. Thunder rumbled somewhere in the distance. Heavy thoughts swirled in my head, but it was impossible to stop. Crap, she was dating someone. Perhaps this is the same Jay. From her note. And why? We need to find this Sandra, she might know more. Sean got into the car, waited until the engine started running smoothly, and pressed the gas. He did not want to return to his empty house, but he needed time to think about his next step. It had been raining for an hour, and soon the fuel level in the pickup tank appeared to be threateningly low. I had to turn to the nearest gas station, which shone like a beacon in the night. Sean drove up to the pump, walked out into the rain, inserted the gun into the tank, and sat back in the cab, waiting for it to fill up. It was a little cold in the cabin, and he turned on the heater. My hands were still shaking from adrenaline. Sean automatically reached for the cigarette lighter. He wanted to light a cigarette, but he remembered where he was. And thank God, my heart is already on edge. The moment he first doubted Carrie's words came back to his memory. She then said that she was staying at the bachelorette party with her friends and returned in the morning, and her shirt was inside out. He then became afraid to ask questions directly and decided not to touch so as not to make a scandal. Now Sean regretted that he had not insisted on talking then. Coward, he whispered to himself. We had to find out everything right away. There was a knock on the cabin. Sean jerked sharply. A guy of about 20 stood at the window, with a hood pulled over his head, apparently a gas station worker. He asked something with gestures. Sean rolled down the window. Yes, everything is fine. You have already filled the tank full. I turned off the supply. Ah, damn, Sean breathed and glanced at the meter board. Indeed, the tank is already full. Thank you, friend. You're welcome, the guy nodded. Pay at the checkout. Sean took his wallet, jumped out of the car, and ran through the puddles to the gas station. It was warm and dry inside. Behind the counter stood a middle-aged woman with a tired face. Behind her was a wall with all kinds of goods: chips, chocolates, energy drinks. There are cigarettes on the top shelves. Tank full, column 2, Sean said, putting money on the counter. And another pack of cigarettes. The woman measured out the change and put the cigarettes next to it. What a hectic night. It's been raining for the second day. The roads were flooded. There was an accident after an accident. You are more careful. Sean just nodded. The words about the accident stabbed somewhere in my chest. He suddenly wanted to talk, to ask if anyone had seen Carrie here. But it was stupid. Dozens of cars passing by. What is the likelihood that she stopped right here? Sean put the cigarettes in his pocket, thanked the woman, and left. As he walked back to the car, a headache came to his temples. I need to get some sleep, he thought, realizing that fatigue would soon take over. But sleeping now would be wasting time, and time might be working against him. Or against Carrie, if... Sean clenched his jaw, starting the pickup. Enough, stop feeling sorry for yourself. We must act, he ordered himself and pressed the gas. Halfway back to his suburb, Sean realized that the only person he could discuss all this nonsense with was his old friend Tony, the same one who once dragged Sean into the bar where he met Carrie. Tony worked as an electrician at various sites, but on Fridays Sean knew this for sure. He usually sat at home and watched football or drank beer with friends. Sean cursed under his breath as he pulled over to the side of the road and pulled out his phone. I waited for the beeps. Tony, sorry for the late call. I have. This is the case. Hey, Kelly, what's that tone? Tony's slightly sleepy but alarmed voice was heard. Are you okay? How can I say? Listen, Carrie had an accident. Crap. How is she? Tony instantly became serious. In a coma. Doctors say the condition is serious. So far, there is little chance. There was a pause on the other side of the line. Tony seemed to be digesting what he had heard. Listen, hold on, brother. I'm really sorry. Maybe I'll come to you, or to the hospital. Sean closed his eyes, imagining Tony, his broad shoulders, blonde hair, tense face. Thank you, but no need yet. I'm trying to figure it out myself now. She crashed on a highway that's not on our route at all. I just found out that she was at some diner, and then she was going to Milwaukee. I just don't understand anything. How can I help? I can ask the guys around. I have friends in the area, service station workers, truck drivers. They often travel north. Maybe they saw it. Great idea. Let's. Sean felt grateful. True, I don't know where to start, other than this Cafe Joe's. There was a man there, and it looked like they had a conflict. Man, Tony asked with concern, do you suspect that she has? Sean gritted his teeth. Don't know. It's just all mixed up in my head. I don't want to think the worst, but the facts speak for themselves. She lied about going to work, but went north to that damn cafe and movie in Milwaukee. And who is Jay? Jay? Tony snorted. Maybe just a friend, Jeanette of some kind. Maybe. Sean sighed, realizing that everything was much more complicated. Listen, Tony, I'm going home now. Maybe we'll meet tomorrow and discuss. Certainly. Call when you're ready, and hang in there, Sean. Thanks, buddy. Sean passed out and looked out the windshield. Behind him, slanting streams of rain continued to flow. Hold on, Tony said. Yes, but what else remains? The house greeted him with echoing silence and the smell of lilac from an old air freshener. Carrie loved lilacs, he knew that for sure. Sean slammed the door behind him and threw his jacket on the hanger. The entire house was in twilight, with only a dim light above the sink coming from the kitchen. He didn't want to go into the bedroom, everything there reminded him of her. Her comb on the nightstand, a bottle of perfume on the dressing table, silk pajamas on the armchair. Instead, Sean walked into the living room, collapsed on the couch, and closed his eyes, feeling physically and mentally exhausted. However, sleep did not come. He lay there for several minutes, listening to the rain drumming on the glass and the old radiators creaking. Finally, in order to somehow distract himself, Sean stood up, took Carrie's phone out of her bag, and turned it on again. Password. Damn 6-digit password. He tried everything he could. Carrie's birthday, their wedding date, his own information, even the personal account number that was once important to Carrie. It's all to no avail. Crap, Sean exclaimed angrily, clutching the phone. How to get into it? He worked in construction, not in it. Hacking a phone is not hitting a nail with a hammer. It was necessary to look for someone who understands. Maybe Tony can recommend someone, Sean thought, throwing the phone on the sofa. Sleep finally overtook him after about 10 minutes. He dreamed of Carrie laughing, alive, just like the first time he saw her in the bar. She winked at him, touched his hand, whispered something inaudible. But then all this turned into the grinding of metal, the howl of sirens, her body in a hospital bed. Sean woke up with a pounding heart and a cold sweat as it began to get light outside. Saturday turned out to be cloudy, but the rain decreased. Gray clouds spread over the Chicago suburbs, giving the landscape a bleak look. Sean quickly washed his face and made coffee. Questions swirled around in my head like annoying flies. Carrie worked as a secretary at a small law firm, Willow Price. There were only 10 people working there, and everyone knew each other. Sean had been there once and met her colleagues a couple of times. No one seemed particularly close to him, but there was one woman, Susan, in her late 40s, who seemed polite and friendly. Sean decided that he would start with her. Using Carrie's phone, he found Susan's number in his contacts. Fortunately, he knew the password for the phone book itself. This was a separate option that Carrie installed a long time ago. An application for quickly dialing the necessary contacts did not require completely unlocking the phone. Sean scrolled down the list and clicked Susan's office. The beeps continued, then a disheveled female voice was heard. Hello, who is this? Susan, hello. This is Sean Kelly, Carrie's husband. Sean? There was bewilderment in Susan's voice. Did something happen? Yes, Carrie is in the hospital. She had a serious accident yesterday. Oh God, no. How is she? In a coma. No progress yet. Look, Susan, I need to talk to you. Personally, can you meet? Of course, I just got up. Now I'll get myself in order. Tell me where, and I will come. Maybe at your home? I don't want anyone to overhear us in the office, and you don't have to go anywhere. Fine. Do you have an address? I think so. Then I'll wait. There was concern in Susan's voice, but also a willingness to help. Sean thanked him and hung up. He didn't want to waste time on the road, but he didn't want to rain down on her house like thunder from the sky, but he had no choice. Half an hour later, he was already standing in front of a small 2-story building in a typical suburban style. Light brown siding, a neat front garden, a couple of chairs with cushions on the porch. Susan opened the door, wearing a robe over a sweater and jeans, her face without makeup, her hair a little disheveled. But genuine concern was visible. Sean, come in, she said quietly. Sean entered the living room and looked around. Everything was clean, cozy. On the shelves, there were photographs of smiling people. It looked like they were her family or friends. Susan motioned for him to sit on the sofa and took the chair opposite. "Would you like to get coffee? I've already drunk. Thank you." There was a short pause. Susan clasped her hands tightly in front of her. "What happened?" Sean briefly recounted how Carrie lost control at night and crashed, and what he found out about the strange cafe and the possible man she was dating. "Do you know anything about this?" he asked, looking her straight in the eyes. She said she would be in the office, but it turns out she went to Route 294. Susan frowned. "Yesterday, she was actually in the office during the day I saw her, but at about 5 o'clock she said she was leaving. She and I exchanged a few words about business, and she mentioned—" Susan paused for a second, "that she had some urgent business to attend to." "What's going on?" Sean raised his eyebrows. I asked what was going on, but she answered something incomprehensible. I thought maybe she had problems with her car or wanted to get somewhere before closing. Didn't attach any importance. You know, in recent months, she had a lot of personal problems. Well, how can I tell you? She seemed nervous, often sat on the computer after work, and said that she was looking for a part-time job. Sean looked at Susan without looking away. "Part-time job? A secret from me?" "She didn't say a word to me. We seem to be doing okay financially. Perhaps she was afraid of your reaction. Or maybe I just wanted to find something specific first. I didn't ask, it's personal." Sean felt a pang of resentment. It turns out that Carrie was playing some kind of game of her own, looking for a job or something else, not trusting him. "Tell me," he continued in an even voice, "have any of Carrie's acquaintances been in the office that I don't know? A man with the initial J, or someone named Jack, Jake, John maybe?" Susan frowned and pursed her lips. "I don't remember, but we have clients, partners in various cases, lawyers from other firms. Surnames sometimes start with J, but I don't remember anyone accompanying her or provoking her to meetings. She often stayed late, left later. There have been 3 or 4 delays over the past weeks. But she said that she was helping her boss with documents because someone was on vacation. We actually had one secretary on vacation." Sean took a deep breath. "Susan, thank you. I understand that you don't want to pry into other people's business, but I'm just desperate to find answers. I'll help as much as I can," she said seriously. "If I remember something, I'll call you." They talked a little more about Carrie's condition and that Susan was ready to visit her in the hospital if Sean didn't mind. Sean nodded, saying that of course he didn't mind. "Perhaps a little later, when I come to my senses," Susan explained. "I'm just in shock now." Sean understood her feelings, thanked her for the conversation, and was about to leave when Susan suddenly said, "Sean, wait. There is one little thing that I remembered." "Yes. 2 weeks ago, I saw Carrie leaving the office when everyone had already left and getting into some kind of car that wasn't her brand. I glanced out the window and there was a black sedan. I didn't remember the license plate, but it definitely wasn't her Honda. There was a man driving. Maybe it doesn't matter." Sean's heart sank. Black sedan. "Maybe the one I saw at the cafe," flashed through my head. "Thank you, Susan. This is important." He went outside, got into the pickup truck, and felt anger mixed with fear and pain. So she was traveling with some guy, looking for a part-time job, was in a cafe with another guy, was going to Milwaukee, he thought. Upon returning home, Sean saw that the red light on the answering machine was blinking. He pressed the button and listened to the message. "Sean, this is Tony. I asked the guys from truck repair and a couple of other friends. No one saw Carrie on the highway yesterday. But I have one friend who fiddles with phones and can remove the password. If necessary, come see him tomorrow. The address is a warehouse on the outskirts. His nickname is Vic. Call." Sean nodded to himself. This is a good chance to look at the contents of Carrie's phone. Maybe there's a clue there. He dialed Tony. "Hey, Tony, hi. I just listened to the message. Can we rush to this Vic today? I don't have time to wait until tomorrow. Today? Well, he usually does all his work at night. He refreshes and repairs devices. Okay, I'll agree. He makes exceptions for friends. Wait, I'll call you back. 10 minutes passed, it seemed like an eternity. Finally, the phone rang. Kelly, we can come to him at 9 in the evening. I'll send you the address. Agreed? Thanks, buddy, Sean said. There were still a few hours left until 9. Sean decided to stop by the hospital to see if Carrie was improving. St. Joseph's Hospital was still full of people. People were bustling around in the foyer, some came to visit relatives, others were in a hurry to the emergency department. Sean went up to the 3rd floor to the intensive care unit. There, in the waiting room, he saw Officer Davis talking with Dr. Ramirez. Mr. Kelly, Davis nodded as Sean came closer. I just wanted to contact you. How's your wife? Everything unchanged, Sean replied, glancing at Ramirez. The doctor seemed to be in a hurry to return to the patients, but still found a few words. Today we checked her performance, the dynamics are stable, but we can't say that it's an improvement. We support her with machines and monitor her brain activity. We cannot give any guarantees yet. These words made Sean's eyes darken for a moment. It took an effort for him to remain calm. Thank you, doctor. Can I see her for a minute? Yes, but no more than 5 minutes. Sean nodded and walked into the room. Carrie was still lying there, connected to IVs and monitors. The eyes are closed, the face is pale, there is a bruise on the cheek that has already begun to turn yellow. Sean approached, barely touching her cold hand. Carrie, I'm here, he muttered. In response, silence, only the measured beeping of the monitor. Sean's heart sank with anguish, but he forced himself to hold on. When he left the room, Davis was already waiting for him in the corridor. Mr. Kelly, I wanted to ask if you remembered anything about the reasons why she could be driving on 294. For now, everything looks like an accident. Nothing new, Sean lied. He didn't want to share the details with the cop until he figured it out himself. She was in the office, and then she got into an accident. Davis frowned. I just called her office, and they confirmed that she left around 5. But no one knows where to go next. Sean nodded, pretending to be indifferent. Yes, alas. If anything turns out, contact me. Davis took out a business card and handed it to Sean. Or if you find eyewitnesses who saw something at the time of the accident, please report it. Got it, Sean nodded, putting away the business card. He left the hospital with a heavy heart, once again feeling the weight of the unknown. In the evening, at exactly 9, Sean drove up to an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city, where Tony was already waiting for him at the gate. There was a dim light burning under the rusty Carter Tools sign. Tony waved at him and yelled for Sean to follow him inside. There's a semi-legal service station here, Tony explained, walking along the dark corridor. Vic rents the back room. There he has all the equipment for repairing phones. But he's a reliable guy, he won't talk too much if you pay. I have cash, Sean nodded, looking around. The smell of dampness and machine oil filled my nostrils, and somewhere in the corner a fluorescent lamp was blinking. Finally, they reached a metal door marked No Entry, and Tony knocked 3 times. The door opened, and a short, thin guy with a mohawk and dark circles under his eyes appeared on the threshold. He had one hand in his jeans pocket and a bag of chips in the other. Oh, Tony, hi. Is this a friend? He asked, waving his hand at Sean. Yes, this is Sean. He urgently needs to remove the password from his phone. Sean, this is Vic. Vic looked Sean up and down. Buddy, come in. Just don't make any sudden movements. I don't like guests. Relax, I'm just paying for your work, Sean muttered. They entered a small room furnished with shelves of electronics, boxes, where smartphones, tablets, wires, and parts were mixed up. On the table there was a soldering iron, some circuit boards, tools, and a monitor. There is an old computer in the corner. Vic threw a bag of chips on the table, sat down in a swivel chair, pursed his lips. Show me your phone. Sean took Carrie's cell phone out of his pocket and handed it to him. Here. There are 6 numbers on the password. I've already tried a dozen combinations. It doesn't work. Vic spun the phone in his hands. The model is not the latest. It shouldn't be difficult. Do you want to completely reset your data or keep it? I need to save everything. Photos, messages, especially correspondence in instant messengers. Understood. Ideally, if she has Defender disabled. There are a couple of programs. I'll try them. If it doesn't work, I'll open the case and resolve the memory. But then you need an hour and a half, at least. How many? Sean asked, worried about time. Let's see. Maybe I'll do it faster, but it will also cost more. I'll cry as much as I need, Sean snapped. Just try to hurry up. Vic narrowed his eyes. Generous. Give me 500 and I'll get started right away, forgetting about all other orders. $500 for an hour of work, Sean exclaimed in surprise. Tony nudged him. It's still cheap, believe me. There are few such specialists. Sean pursed his lips, but did not argue. Time is more important than money. He reached into his pocket, took out 500, and handed it to Vic. Hold it. If you do it within an hour, I'll add another 100. Vic's eyes sparkled with joy. Sweet. Fine. Sit over there. Don't interfere. He nodded towards the metal chair against the wall, turned to the table, and connected the phone to the computer. Lines of code and some programs flashed on the screen. Tony sat down next to Sean and looked at this action gloomily. I hope it's worth the candle, he said quietly, leaning towards Sean. We'll see, Sean answered just as quietly, feeling the tension growing inside. I could try to do it without hacking, but I'll never find the truth, he mentally justified himself. Vic, meanwhile, launched various utilities, entered commands, biting his lip from time to time and muttering something. I rebooted the phone several times and connected some kind of intricate adapter. About 40 minutes later, he exclaimed, Eat. The program took a memory dump. Now I'll decrypt it and be able to bypass the password protection. Sean's heart sank. It was coming out after all. Vic turned off the phone, then turned it on again. A standard menu appeared on the screen without requiring a password. Congratulations, buddy. Vic leaned back in his chair. You can use it. The main thing is don't reset the settings, otherwise this whole bypass will be lost. Great. Sean quickly walked up to the table, took the phone in his hands, and took a deep breath. Everything was fine in the applications. Thank you, Vic. He extended his palm. Well, what about the promised 100? Sean pulled out another bill and placed it in his hand. Vic chuckled contentedly and hid the money. If anything happens, call me. I can sort out something else. I think I'll go get some coffee. It's a long night. He left the room, leaving Sean and Tony alone. Let's take a look, Tony said, looking at the phone. Yes, Sean nodded, quickly swiping through the menu. Sean stood at the table and jerkily scrolled through messages, checking the call log, WhatsApp, Telegram, all the applications that Carrie could use. Tony nervously shifted from foot to foot, trying to look over his shoulder. Well, Tony asked when Sean stopped at the call list. The last outgoing call was at 1810, no number, and the incoming call was at 1950 from the same hidden number. Sean frowned. This is apparently after their meeting. Then Sean switched to instant messengers. Most chats are nothing special correspondence with friends, colleagues, family chat with some cousin. But one contact caught his attention. The name on Telegram was identified as Jay. It's him, Sean whispered, staring at the dialogue. Jay. Tony stepped closer so he could see the screen. Sean began flipping through the correspondence. The messages were fragmentary, sometimes short, often without names. But the general mood was clearly emotional. J. 3. 2. Everything is not going according to plan. We need to reconsider the conditions. Carrie's 03. 2. What are the conditions? I'm already tired of these games. J. 3. 2. We need another meeting. Don't pretend you don't understand. Sean felt a chill run down his spine. He continued scrolling. Carrie's 5. I can't now. My husband is at home all the time. We will look for another way. J. 5:02. I don't care. Do what you want, but I won't give up. Then several days passed without correspondence. After. J. 12:02. Tomorrow I'll wait for you in the same place, 18 o'clock, and don't be late. Carrie 12:02. You leave me no choice. Okay. Sean scrolled further, frowning. What does this even mean? What conditions? What meetings? Tony pursed his lips. Listen, maybe she was blackmailed. He demanded something from her. She tried to break free, but could not. Looks like it, Sean muttered. Here, look. Carrie 0215. It's not easy to get money because I don't print it. It takes time. J. 15:02. You have a week, then you'll regret it. Money? Tony exclaimed. Did she give him money? Sean scrolled further, getting to recent dates. Carrie the day before yesterday. I collected everything I could. Meet me at Joe's, 7:30 p.m. J. The day before yesterday. Wonderful. Take the documents I asked for. Documents? Sean looked up at Tony. Did she steal something from the office or from home? I don't know, friend, but there's clearly some kind of dark story here. Tony swallowed a lump. Maybe this J. I found out about some important papers of the company. Blackmail, ransom, who knows? Sean scrolled through the correspondence to the very end. Last message from J. Was sent on the day of the accident, around 8 in the evening. J. 2010. Where have you gone? You have my money, but what about the documents? Call back. There were no more messages. Now everything fell into place. Carrie came out after the meeting, perhaps freaked out, got behind the wheel, drove further north, or panicked, and an accident happened. But most importantly, the unknown J. demanded money and some papers from her. So that's why she was nervous, looking for a part-time job and crying in secret. Sean exhaled, feeling as if a spring was compressing in his chest. She needed money, but she didn't say a word to me. Are you sure this is not a commonplace creditor? Maybe she borrowed a large sum, Tony suggested. Hardly. Documents, you will regret it. Sounds like a blackmailer or something similar. Sean briefly checked the other applications. There was almost nothing there, just a few photos, some receipts, scans of papers. He settled on one, a contract for the sale and purchase of a plot, apparently from a law office. Second file, bank statements, but not in Carrie's name or his. Surnames that meant nothing to him. This is not ours. She definitely pulled out some client documents. For what? Sean looked at the screen in confusion. It turns out that she risked her job, the law. For what? To give these papers to J. Tony shook his head silently. Maybe he forced her. Maybe he knew the office had the information he needed, and he took advantage of her access. Sean felt himself begin to shake with anger and bitterness. She got involved in this, didn't tell me anything. Either she didn't trust me, or she was afraid. Damn, and now she's lying in a coma, and I don't know how to help her. Tony put his hand on his shoulder. Calm down, friend. Now we at least have a lead. This J. Blackmail, documents. We need to understand who he is. Yes, Sean automatically looked at his watch. 10:15 p.m. I'll get him. Tony nodded. Let's go out. It's dusty and noisy here. They said goodbye to Vic, who had returned and made himself some instant noodles and went outside into the drizzling rain. This is the plan, Sean began as they stopped at the pickup truck. We need to find out where he got these demands from, maybe ask Carrie's office about those documents. But be careful not to harm her. What if we go to the police? Tony suggested. Should I tell them about the blackmail, show them the correspondence? Do you think they'll get to it right away? We have no evidence of the identity of J. In addition, if there is some kind of corporate secret, Carrie may become a suspect in the theft of documents. Then she faces a real sentence if she comes out of the coma. I understand, Tony nodded. Okay, what else can we do? I have his phone number, although it's hidden, but maybe Vic knows how to figure out the number from a memory dump. Or I'll find the hacker. Sean rubbed his forehead. Crap. Tony sighed. Vic doesn't do that kind of thing. I'll try to talk to someone who can get through the numbers, but this is unofficial. Fine. I'll come up with something too. Thanks for your help. Tony patted him on the shoulder. We'll figure it out, Sean. The main thing is not to give up. Late that evening, Sean returned home and drove the pickup into the garage. The headache and fatigue were overwhelming. There was silence inside, only the wind howled outside the window. He took off his shoes and walked into the living room. Suddenly, the landline phone on the table by the sofa rang. Sean froze. Who could be calling so late? Hello, he said sharply, grabbing the phone. A few seconds of silence, then a quiet male voice. Mr. Kelly. Sean became wary. Yes, who is it? You better leave this story. Nothing good will come of it. What? Sean was surprised, clutching the phone. I know you are looking for information. We walked around the cafe, asked questions. It's in vain, Mr. Kelly. Sean felt the blood pounding in his temples. Look, whoever you are, you're messing with the wrong person. If you know something about my wife, you better tell me now, otherwise. Otherwise what? The voice interrupted mockingly. You don't want her to get hurt more, do you? She's in a coma, Sean muttered. She can't get any worse. There was silence for a moment at the other end of the line, then the voice became colder. It could get worse, Mr. Kelly. Even when people are in a coma, many things can go wrong. Make sure there is no accident in the ward. Listen, bastard, Sean began, but the interlocutor hung up. Sean stood there with his heart pounding, clutching his phone. Crap, he barked into the void. We need to go to Carrie and keep watch outside the ward. But doctors may not allow it. He grabbed the phone and wanted to call Davis, but stopped. What will he tell the cop? Like, they called and threatened. No evidence, unknown number. He hissed a curse and threw his cell phone on the sofa. The stranger's words rang in his head. It could get worse. An accident. Sean knew that this might not be idle chatter. He made up his mind. He would go to the hospital, spend the night there if necessary, but would not leave Carrie unattended. The night duty doctor received Sean in the emergency room with a dissatisfied grimace. You were here this afternoon. It is now night, and the department is closed to visitors. Listen, doctor, I'm Carrie Kelly's husband from the intensive care unit. I need your help. Everything is still stable with her. We would have called ourselves. The doctor snapped, apparently exhausted from the night shift. Sean lowered his voice, trying to sound convincing. They're threatening me. I'm worried that someone might harm her. Understand, I'm not paranoid. This is very serious. The doctor frowned, looked at Sean, assessed his fatigue and tension. We have constant video surveillance in the intensive care unit and staff on duty. It is difficult for outsiders to penetrate. But if you want, you can sit in the waiting room. Yes, you will have to spend the night on the bench. That'll do, Sean nodded. Thank you. The doctor spread his hands and sighed. You can go over there. In the morning, I will ask you to vacate the premises when the shift arrives. Sean nodded gratefully. He went to the reception area, where there were old flu prevention posters on the walls, several chairs, and a long plastic bench. The smell of disinfectants and cheap coffee. Sean sat down, leaned back against the cold wall, and closed his eyes. Did I want such a marriage, such a life? Did you think that I would sit by a hospital bed, not knowing what was happening under my nose? Damn it, Carrie, why did you get yourself involved in this? Who is this Jay? And what did he want? He did not notice how he fell into a short, anxious sleep. In the morning, Sean was awakened by the noise of patients entering. Sleepy and exhausted, he went to the toilet, washed himself with cold water, and tidied himself up as best he could. Then I decided to go up to the intensive care floor. The same nurse who saw him yesterday was sitting at the post. Are you here again? She was surprised. Didn't you leave? Yes, I spent the night in the reception area. How's Carrie? No changes. The doctor will come in a couple of hours and do a round. Sean nodded in relief. Still, it seems like nothing happened during the night. He sat down on a bench near the post, trying not to interfere with the work of the medical staff, but not to go far from the ward. About 15 minutes later, Susan appeared in the corridor, holding a small bouquet of flowers and a bag of fruit in her hands. She saw Sean and came up. "Hello, I came to visit Carrie. I brought her some. Well, it's more symbolic, but still." "Thank you for coming," Sean said sincerely. "The condition is still the same. Doctors don't promise anything." Susan lowered her head, sympathy flashing in her eyes. "Can I look at her?" Sean stood up. "I think so, but not for long." They walked to the room together, and the nurse allowed them to come in for just a couple of minutes. Susan put the flowers in a plastic glass of water on the windowsill and said something quietly to Carrie. Sean stood nearby, looking at his wife's motionless face. Suddenly, Susan turned to him. "Sean, I wanted to talk about those documents. Remember what I mentioned?" "Certainly. Did you remember something?" Susan nodded and pulled him by the sleeve into the hallway, away from the staff. "I called one of my colleagues. She's on vacation now, but she also noticed strangeness in Carrie's behavior. She says that Carrie copied some real estate contracts that were not related to her usual duties. Maybe these were the same documents." "Who were these agreements with?" Sean clarified. "I don't know for sure, but it seemed like the last names were Harper and Green. That's all I managed to find out. Maybe this is a client of the company." Sean squeezed her hand gratefully. "Susan, this is very important. Can you look at these cases in the office and find out who manages these contracts?" Susan was confused. "These are confidential documents, but for Carrie's sake, I will try to carefully find out the details." "Thank you," Sean said quietly. "I am very grateful to you." At that moment, a loud male voice was heard in the corridor. "Mr. Kelly." Sean turned around and saw the tall figure of Officer Davis. He walked with quick steps, a gloomy expression on his face. "I need to talk to you, urgently." "What's the matter?" Sean was wary, trying not to show his anxiety. "Let's go outside," Davis said briefly, and Sean, exchanging glances with Susan, followed him to the elevator. They went down to the first floor and exited through the automatic doors onto the landing at the main entrance. The sky was clouded with heavy clouds, promising a new downpour. Davis turned to Sean. "We received an anonymous call that you are conducting some kind of independent investigation and are allegedly trying to interfere with the investigation." "Call? From whom?" Sean was surprised, clenching his fists. "I don't know. The number is hidden. The voice is distorted. But the point is that we were warned about your actions. You are allegedly harassing witnesses, threatening someone." "This is nonsense," Sean exclaimed. "I didn't threaten anyone. I'm just trying to understand what happened to my wife." Davis pursed his lips. "I understand. But if you dig up something, we must know it, particularly when it comes to crime. Mr. Kelly, I urge you to be prudent. You should not engage in amateur activities. If there is blackmail or threats to your wife's life, it is better to contact us immediately." "Yeah, so you would open a case and immediately accuse Carrie of stealing documents?" Sean thought bitterly, but he said out loud more softly. "Listen, officer, someone wants me not to rummage into this matter. He called me last night threatening me. Now he has also snitched on you, turning everything upside down. Don't you understand that this is all strange?" Davis sighed, looking at his watch. "Understand. But I am limited in my actions. I need facts, evidence. Your words are not enough to initiate an active investigation. Or do you know something specific?" Sean hesitated. Should he open correspondence with Jay? But this could put Carrie at risk from the law. "Not yet," he finally said. "If something appears, I'll let you know." "Okay," Davis nodded, looking him straight in the eyes. "I hope you are not planning to commit lynching." "I just want the truth," Sean replied sharply. "Okay, if you change your mind, call." The officer took out a business card. "And warn us if something happens again." He turned around and walked to his car. Sean was left standing under a leaden sky, feeling a contradiction inside. On the one hand, it was logical to contact the police. On the other hand, they could accuse both Carrie and him of some involvement in the theft. And if Jay finds out that the police are involved, maybe he will take more drastic measures. Getting ready to leave for a meeting with Tony, Sean stopped by the house for just a few minutes to change clothes. He opened the front door and saw that the rug in the hallway had been moved and a piece of glass was lying in the corridor. My heart skipped a beat. Carefully walking inside, he noticed that one of the windows was slightly open. The lock has been broken. Sean grabbed a baseball bat from the closet and walked slowly around the rooms, ready for anything. But there was no one inside. In the living room, he found a mess. The pillows had been thrown off the sofa. The filing cabinet was open. The drawers are pulled out. The contents are scattered on the floor. It seemed like they were looking for something here. There was a pen on the table. Next to it was a piece of paper with handwritten words. "You're making a mistake. Stop. No one will be better from the truth." "Bastards," Sean hissed, clutching the bat. "They snuck into my house." He quickly checked his garage. Everything was there, although the door was slightly open. His toolbox was untouched. Sean sat down on the sofa, throwing away the bat, and involuntarily laughed bitterly. "Well, are you interfering in my life? You chose the wrong guy to intimidate." The next day, around noon, Sean decided to make a direct visit to Willow Price. He knew it was risky, but he hoped that he would be able to get at least some clues. There was a young guy sitting behind the administration desk who knew Carrie by sight. "Oh, Mr. Kelly, she's—" He stopped, remembering that Carrie was in the hospital. "I wanted to talk to her boss, Mr. Price." "Mr. Price, just a minute." The guy dialed the internal number. "Mr. Price, you have a visitor, Carrie Kelly's husband." There was indistinct muttering from the receiver. The guy glanced sideways at Sean. "You can go through, end of the corridor, and to the right." Sean thanked him and walked down the corridor past the doors marked lawyer, assistant, conference room. At the end of the corridor, there was a spacious office, where a plump, balding man in a three-piece suit sat at a large desk. He looked up at the newcomer. "Mr. Kelly, come in, sit down. I'm Peter Price." "Thank you," Sean said briefly, sitting down on a chair. "I came because I need to understand what Carrie was working on before the accident." Price crossed his arms over his chest, giving his face an expression of official concern. "We are very sorry about what happened. Carrie is a wonderful employee. We sincerely hope she gets better." "But what do you mean, worked on?" Sean looked straight into his eyes. "I know that in recent weeks she has been taking some documents related to real estate, perhaps without official permission. Can you explain this?" Price tensed, his face turned purple. "Where did you get the idea?" "I found out. I need details to understand what happened to her." The man pursed his lips and suddenly flared up. "Listen, Mr. Kelly, if your wife took something without consent, this is a serious violation. But we have no evidence that she carried anything away. Maybe she copied it or took pictures." Price leaned back in his chair, looking at Sean from under his brows. "Are you accusing her of theft?" "I don't blame them. I'm trying to save her from trouble. If someone was blackmailing her and demanding these papers, wouldn't you want to help?" Price shook his head. "Mr. Kelly, I understand your grief, but let's not fantasize. If you want copies of the contracts she negotiated, you must write a formal request or come with a warrant from the police." Sean felt this bureaucratic arrogance beginning to infuriate him. "Look, Price, if she really brought out the documents, you will have to deal with the police and the press when everything comes to light. Isn't it easier to help me now? Is this a threat?" Price narrowed his eyes. "This is a warning." Sean stood up and leaned towards the table. "I don't want a scandal, but if this is one of your clients or partners, you won't care when he breaks in through the back door." Price furrowed his brow, breathing heavily. Then, with obvious reluctance, he said, "Fine. I'll check our database to see what contracts Carrie has been given in recent weeks. And if I find something strange, I'll let you know. When? Give me a day or two. I don't have much time, Sean paused. Price flashed his eyes angrily, but remained silent. Sean turned around and walked out, slamming the door. This bureaucrat clearly knows or suspects something, and perhaps covering for the client. But well, we'll see what he says in a couple of days. An hour after talking with Price, Sean sat in his car parked on the side of the road, frantically dialing Tony to share the latest news. Suddenly, the phone lying on the seat rang. Unfamiliar number. Sean replied, "Hello?" Silence. Then a mocking male laugh was heard. "Sean Kelly, knight without armor. Walking in circles, want to save your princess. I'm afraid you're too naive. Who are you?" Sean growled, feeling his jaw clenching with anger. "Oh, forget about me. I'm just someone who needs the documents your wife tried to hand over, and it seems she didn't have time." Sean clutched his phone. "Are you Jay? Let's say, I heard that you went to Mr. Price. It's funny. Do you think he will be honest with you? He doesn't care about your wife. He will also put her on trial if he realizes that she copied his files." "What are you trying to achieve?" Sean asked, feeling rage boiling inside. "I already said I need documents. And since Carrie can't give them away now, you'll take care of it, right?" "Why on earth?" Sean snorted. "I don't owe you anything." There was an evil laugh on the other end again. "Listen, man, your wife is in a coma because of her stupidity. Now imagine what would happen if I ordered someone to go to the hospital and unplug its life support system. So what are you going to do, hero?" The voice sounded cold and mocking, trying to belittle Sean as a man to make him look helpless. Sean barely restrained himself from telling this guy to go to hell. "Listen to me." But Jay did not let up. "You are an ordinary loser who is not able to keep his wife at home. She found a way to participate in this game and ended up ruining her life. Do you think you can bring everything back with your pathetic attempts to find out the truth?" Sean clenched his fists until his nails dug into his palms. "I repeat, what are you trying to achieve?" "Documents. If she still has them, bring them to me. If they are not there, you can get them as you want. Otherwise, her treatment may be unexpectedly interrupted." "Listen, you freak, if you touch her, I'll kill her," Sean muttered. "Oh, brave man," drawled a mocking voice. "Well, try it. Just know, I have money and connections. You are an ordinary worker, building houses and garages. What will you come to me with? With a hammer?" "Stop talking," Sean choked with hatred. "Tell me where and when I can find you. I'll contact you myself. Now sit down and keep quiet. And remember, if you interfere, everything will end much worse." Short beeps were heard. Sean hit the steering wheel with his hand, as if wanting to throw out pain and anger. Sean got into motion and drove to a familiar bar, where he usually crossed paths with Tony. While I was getting there, I called him and agreed to meet. The Black Tap Bar was located in the suburbs. There were a lot of people around, so the risk of someone unfamiliar overhearing was minimal. Tony was already waiting at a table in the corner, a mug of beer in front of him. Seeing Sean's tense face, he stood up. "What's happened?" Sean sat down and sighed heavily. "That bastard called Jay, or his accomplice. He threatened to kill Carrie if I didn't get him the documents." "How? Did he just say that?" Tony rolled his eyes. "Yeah, that bastard mocked me, said I couldn't do anything. He asked what I would threaten him with a hammer." Tony clenched his fists. "We need to find out who he is. I called an acquaintance who will get the number through the details, but perhaps it is a virtual number or a left device." "We'll take the risk anyway," Sean muttered. "Let your friend check it." "Already. But for now there is silence." Sean wrapped his hands around the mug of cold beer, but didn't even take a sip. "You know, Tony, I understand that this Jay is not alone. He has assistants. They already broke into my house and left a note." Tony swore under his breath. "Crap. And the police won't help. If I go to the police, they might imprison Carrie for theft or complicity. And these people, having learned about police intervention, can do something irreparable. Tony tapped his fingers on the table. Listen, if Price finds at least something and tells you, you will understand what documents we are talking about. Maybe you can give them to this Jay to get rid of it. But then he will continue the blackmail, and Carrie herself will become involved in illegal affairs. It's not a fact that this will all stop. They fell silent for a few seconds. I'll wait for an answer from Price and Susan. At the same time, I'll try to get something out of Joe's cafe through the waitress Sandra. Do you remember the owner saying that she might know more? I can go with you if you want, Tony offered. It wouldn't hurt to have some insurance if there's some kind of surprise. Okay, Sean agreed. Now I'll go back to the hospital. We need to make sure Carrie is okay. In the evening, Sean arrived at the hospital again, stopping at the supermarket on the way to buy a couple of coffees and croissants for the staff. Sometimes a small gift makes communication easier. He went up to the third floor and saw an unfamiliar young nurse standing near Carrie's room. Good evening, I'm Carrie's husband, Sean introduced himself. Can I go through? Yes, she nodded. Everything remains unchanged, if that's what you're asking. Sean entered the room and stood by his wife's bed, touching her cold hand. Going out into the corridor, he wanted to go to the visitor's room, but noticed in the far corner a man in a sports jacket with a hood who seemed to be watching him. When Sean appeared, he quickly looked away and began rummaging through his phone. Sean walked up to the post and asked the nurse on duty, "Excuse me, do you know that guy?" The nurse glanced. It seems he said that he came to see one of his relatives, but I don't remember to whom. Sean's heart started beating faster. Do you mind if I sit here and be next to my wife? And you'll still have to leave at night, she sternly reminded me, but for now you can. Sean sat down on a chair, trying to quietly observe the guy. He seemed to be wondering whether to approach the room, but then looked at his watch and went to the elevator. Maybe it's just a person visiting another patient. Sean tried to calm down, but inside everything was screaming, "Careful." He decided to stay until closing. Doctors and nurses passed by, feeding patients, and some were pushing strollers. Sean looked around warily, but the strange guy did not return. Later, the nurse on duty approached him. "Sir, we are no longer allowing visitors. If you want, you can go to the reception." "Okay," Sean said reluctantly. But instead of the reception area, he went down to the car and parked so that he could see the main entrance. I decided to stay overnight in the pickup truck again. In the morning, Sean, who had a very limited rest because he slept in the car, went to the nearest fast food restaurant, grabbed himself a large coffee and a sandwich. While I was eating alone, the phone rang. Susan's number flashed on the screen. "Yes, Susan." "Sean, I found a case involving the names Harper and Green. This is a contract for the sale of a large plot of land for development. A very strange story. According to the documents, the owner of the plot is a certain Harper, and the buyer is Green, but there are suspicions that these may be dummies." "Framed?" Sean asked, frowning. "Well, I'm not a lawyer, but there were rumors that money could be laundered through these transactions or something like that. Carrie clearly dug into this, because in the office she sometimes helped sort papers for the case. Understand, maybe serious people are involved in this. Maybe. Sean, be careful. I saw Price arguing with someone on the phone, mentioning money, and the deal is in jeopardy. I'm not sure if this is connected, but I have a bad feeling. Thank you, Susan. You are very helpful. I'll contact you later." Sean ended the call, stood up, threw out the trash, and went out to the car. My head was buzzing. It looks like Carrie has stumbled upon a criminal scheme. She was ordered to steal documents confirming the fraud, or vice versa, real papers were needed to hide the forgery. Jay, maybe an intermediary or someone from this chain. Sean called Tony and said, "Meet me at Joe's Cafe. That waitress, Sandra, should be there this afternoon. The owner said she would come on shift in a couple of days." Tony agreed, and they agreed to meet at a cafe around noon. Sean arrived first and saw that there were several cars in the parking lot, including Joe's beat-up pickup truck. He entered the cafe and a young woman with purple streaks in her hair was busy behind the bar. "Good afternoon, have a seat," she shouted, noticing him. "I'll be right there." Sean chose a table in the corner. Soon a woman came up with a notepad. "What will you order?" "My name is Sandra. Today I am a bartender and waiter." "Sandra, I need to talk to you about Carrie Kelly, who was here a couple of days ago," Sean began, reaching under the table to show an old photo of Carrie from her phone. "I'm her husband." Sandra frowned. 2 minutes, I'll guess." "Oh yes, this is the one who almost quarreled with the guy." "Yes," Sean nodded. "I really need to find out what they talked about, where she went, everything you know." "Is this some kind of scandal? Will there be police?" Sandra was wary. "I'm just trying to figure it out," Sean said quietly. "My wife is in a coma after an accident, and there are people who threaten her." Sandra looked at him with sympathy. "Okay, I'll tell you what I remember. But let's do this. I'll pretend that I'm taking the order so as not to arouse suspicion." At that moment, the door opened slightly and Tony entered. Sean waved to him and Tony sat down next to him. Sandra looked at him and bowed her head slightly. "Another?" "Yes, my own. You can talk to him." Sandra pursed her lips and pretended to write in a notebook. That evening, they sat at the far table. I went there with a tray. I heard snippets. The man spoke rather sharply about the deal, about money. She begged him to wait, and that there's simply no more. Sean and Tony looked at each other. Sandra continued, lowering her voice. He repeated several times, "You know what connections I have. Don't you dare try to deceive me." She tried to hold on, but her voice was shaking. Then he grabbed her wrist, I saw it, and she pulled away sharply. "What did he look like?" Tony asked. "Well, tall, blonde hair, slightly elongated face. The eyes are gray, it seems. He was wearing a gray jacket and hood. Maybe a scar, tattoos?" Sean clarified. "I didn't notice. It was a bit dark. But he gave the impression of a tough, confident person." "What's next?" Sean asked. She went to pay. He also stood up, whispered something in her ear, and they went out together. Through the window, I saw her standing by her car, and he was next to her. Then he turned and went to the black sedan, got in, and drove away first. And yes, after 3 or 4 minutes, she started the engine and also drove away. He didn't come back. Tony looked into Sandra's eyes. "No, I didn't see it. I don't really care about other people's squabbles," but she looked scared. "That's true," Sean said quietly. "Thank you, Sandra. You helped a lot." She nodded. "What will you order now?" "Coffee for the two of us," Sean replied, motioning to Tony. Sandra quickly wrote it down and walked away so as not to attract attention. Tony took a breath. Sedan, gray jacket, gray eyes. This is at least something. "I'll find him, no matter what it costs me," Sean muttered through his teeth. "But I don't know how yet. I can give you advice. Try talking to mechanics or tire shops in the area. If this guy drives on 294 a lot, he might have had his car serviced somewhere. But there is not enough information." Sandra brought coffee. She and Tony took a sip, each lost in their own thoughts. In the afternoon, Sean couldn't stand it anymore and called the Willow Price office again. This time, the secretary said that Price was not there. "I left on business," she explained dryly. Sean got angry. He saw these deeds. Most likely Price is avoiding conversation. Sean decided to do things differently. Through Tony, he found out Price's address. He once installed an alarm in the mansion of this lawyer. In the evening, when it began to get dark, Sean drove up to a luxurious house in one of the prestigious areas. A fence, wrought iron gates, a well-groomed lawn, expensive cars in the garage. Of course, there could have been security, but Sean decided he would take the risk. He pressed the bell button at the gate. A few seconds passed. Price's voice came from the speaker. "Who's there?" "This is Sean Kelly. I need to talk." "Go away, Mr. Kelly. I do not intend to discuss the company's affairs at home." "This concerns my wife's life," Sean shouted, straining his voice. The gate did not open. Sean hit the metal surface with his palm. "Price, I know about Harper and Green. If you want to cover up their machinations, please do so. But then I'll go to the police. I will say that your company condoned money laundering." At the other end, the connection was interrupted. Then the gate smoothly slid to the sides. Sean tensely entered the yard, where Price was already leaving the house in a robe, over which an expensive sheepskin coat was thrown. The face is distorted with anger. "What kind of nonsense are you talking about, Mr. Kelly?" "What we heard," Sean snapped. "My wife could have participated in copying documents for Jay. And I know the Harper Green deal is a shady scheme. Why did you come here?" Price tried to speak muffled so that the neighbors would not hear. "I want to understand who is behind this. If your company got involved in fraud, then maybe Jay, your partner, or a competitor." Price snorted irritably. "I'm not going to listen to empty accusations." "Empty. My wife was almost killed. She is in a coma, and they are threatening me." "It's not empty." Sean clenched his fists. "If you value your reputation, tell me the truth." Price froze, looking at Sean with obvious tension. "Okay, the Harper Green case is really dubious. The client came to us through an intermediary who said that this was an urgent transaction, that there was money in the accounts, everything was legal. But I didn't like some aspects. And yet you took it." "Money matters a lot, Mr. Kelly," Price answered coldly. "But when I began to be cautious, the intermediary said that we need to close the deal in a short time. Perhaps your wife found out something about the illegal origin of this money." "The name of the intermediary?" Sean stepped closer. Price shook his head. "I only know that his name is James. He brought us a package of documents and said that he was authorized to negotiate. He didn't mention his last name. The business card said something like JK Consulting." Sean felt his insides go cold. "James, so who is this J? Do you have a contact phone number? Address?" Sean asked quickly. Price glanced at the house, as if afraid that he might be overheard. "There is a phone, but the secretary called him a couple of times. He did not leave a permanent address. He only said that he lived either in another state or in one of the cities in Illinois. But I didn't delve into it." "Give me the number." "No, I can't. This is a client." Sean pursed his lips. "Either you give me the number, or I'll hand over everything I've learned to the police the very next day. And believe me, you will have more problems than I do." Price struggled with himself for a few seconds, then gritted his teeth. "Okay, to hell with you. Wait." He disappeared into the house, and a minute later came out with a piece of paper. "Here, this is the number he gave to my secretary, but I'm sure it may be invalid for a long time." "Thank you," Sean said, taking the paper. "If you remember anything else, call me." "Get out," Price exhaled, turning toward the house. "And don't tell anyone that I gave this to you." The next day, Sean dialed Tony and asked to meet again at the same bar. When they sat down at the table, Sean had a piece of paper with a number in his hands. Tony took out his cell phone. "Let's try." I dialed the number and pressed the phone to my ear. Pause. Then the answering machine. "The number is not in service." "Damn," Tony breathed, putting down his cell phone. "No wonder." Sean tapped his fingers on the table darkly. Tony nodded, and then Sean's phone rang. He saw that Susan was calling. "Yes, Susan?" Sean answered quickly. "Sean, Price came to the office in a rage, yelling that you came to his house. He said that you are now a dangerous person who can destroy the company. Everyone is scared." Sean sighed. "Sorry, but I needed to put pressure on him." "I understand. I'm just afraid he might give an ultimatum. Either you stop digging, or he'll press charges against Carrie. After all, she really copied documents." "Let him try," Sean grinned, but inside he felt anxious. "But thank you for telling me." He disconnected and looked at Tony. "It looks like I have another enemy in Price." "He's just afraid for his own skin," Tony muttered. "We're close to a solution, Sean. This James could pull off a scam, and Carrie would find herself between a rock and a hard place. Either help him or get in trouble with the law. The only question is what exactly he wanted." receive documents in order to keep them while covering their tracks? Or, on the contrary, did he need evidence so that he could later blackmail someone bigger? Tony shrugged. Anything is possible. The next afternoon, Sean was gloomily leafing through the newspaper while sitting in the kitchen when the phone rang. The call came from Tony. "Sean, I have news. I rang through Vic the number that Price gave. The number was activated once in the suburbs of Milwaukee, where they topped up the balance with cash through the terminal. Vic was able to track the date and time. There is even a photograph from a surveillance camera, a man in a hood, but in profile it is clear that he is blonde." "Exactly him," Sean exhaled, clutching the phone. "Can you get the address of this terminal?" "Already got it. 255 West Grove Street. This is some kind of area full of warehouses and workshops." "Great. Tony, we need to go there and ask people. Maybe someone has seen this guy." "I'm free today. I can go with you," Tony suggested. "Okay, let's take off. I can't sit still." The journey took almost 2 hours. Sean and Tony reached the area where, according to Vic, the same terminal was located. It turned out to be a poor industrial area on the outskirts of Milwaukee. Around there were warehouses, auto repair shops, dilapidated buildings with graffiti on the walls. They parked on the side of the road. Tony showed a picture from the camera, a man in a gray jacket, a hood, blonde hair sticking out from under him. The face is seen from the side, the angle is not ideal, but if you look closely, there is something recognizable. "Let's start with the nearest establishments," Tony suggested. "Maybe someone noticed him." They found a small store where there was a payment terminal. The owner, an elderly man, was not particularly talkative, but when he saw the photo, he said, "Yes, there are a lot of people walking here. I don't remember this specifically. Maybe ask the warehouse security across the street. One guy there often sees everything, who comes and goes." Sean and Tony headed there. The warehouse actually had a checkpoint with a booth, and a young security guard sat inside, twirling a smartphone in his hands. Sean showed him the photo. "Have you seen this man? Perhaps I came in or passed by a couple of weeks ago." The guard scratched his head. "I don't remember exactly. There are a lot of people hanging around here. But it seems one similar guy came to us and asked if we were renting out the premises. Then he said that he had a company called JK Consulting, or something like that." Sean caught Tony's gaze, and he perked up. Yes, exactly. Do you remember when this was?" "Maybe 3 weeks ago." I then told him that the warehouse was not rented out as offices. He asked for his boss's business card, and I gave it. He said he would contact me, but he didn't. "Did he come by car?" Sean clarified. "Yeah, black sedan. I don't remember the brand, maybe Ford or Chevy. I didn't see the numbers." Sean tensed. "I understand, but maybe you noticed something else? He was very self-confident. He behaved like an important person." I also thought, why did he come to such a wilderness if he supposedly has a cool consulting firm? "Thank you, that's something," Sean nodded. They thanked the guard and walked further down the street. No exact coordinates yet, but at least confirmation that JK Consulting is a real pipeline, and this James was looking for premises, possibly for illegal transactions. Sean and Tony spent a few more hours visiting various auto repair shops and nearby eateries, showing off photos. Most shook their heads. Finally, one mechanic saw the photo and said, "I think I saw this guy a couple of times. He stopped at a gas station nearby. I have a friend who works there. I think he told him that he lived in a motel near the highway." "Which motel?" Sean perked up. "Don't know. But there are a couple of cheap motels near the highway at exit 14. Maybe you should ask around there." Sean looked at Tony. "Let's go." Exit 14 led them to a series of old motels with great names. Sunset Inn, Starlight Motel, Happy Stay. Shabby walls, rare cars in the parking lot. A place for truckers and those hiding from the law, Sean thought. They drove to 3 motels and never heard of a guest named James or even a black sedan. Finally, on the 4th Green Pine Motel, The administrator, with a tired face, frowned at the word James. "Who's asking?" "Friends," Tony said quickly. "They told us he might be here." "Listen, I just started my shift here 2 days ago. There was Barbara before me. Maybe she knows. Tomorrow will be in the morning. Come in." Sean and Tony looked at each other. Another dead end. "Maybe you have a logbook. We'll just take a look." Sean reached for his wallet. The man looked around, then nodded. "Okay, I'll show you, but quickly, and if you don't find anything, don't find fault." He held out a tattered notebook with crooked notes. Tony started scrolling, and suddenly Sean pointed his finger. "Here, James K. Dated almost 3 weeks ago, paid in cash, dropped out after a week. Room 12, Tony read. And now, Sean turned to the administrator. "He's already left, right?" "Yes, according to the records, I left 10 days ago." Sean gritted his teeth. Missed it. But at least they found confirmation that James K. was here. "Did he mention where he would go next?" Tony asked. "How should I know?" The man shrugged. "He said that he has a business, travels on projects, nothing more." Sean took out a $20 bill. "Maybe you remember what kind of car he had." "Black sedan, emblem. Either Ford Fusion or Chevrolet Malibu. I don't remember exactly." "Thank you." They left the office. Tony looked at Sean. "There's no point in staying here. He's already disappeared." Tony asked to be dropped off at his house because he still had to go to work in the morning. Sean stopped at the entrance to the old brick high-rise where Tony lived. Sean nodded and drove off towards his suburb. On the way, he noticed in the rearview mirror a car that seemed to have been following him for about 15 minutes. My heart skipped a beat. He checked black sedan. No, it's a blue SUV. Maybe it's a coincidence. He made a circle around the block. The car was not far behind. "I think I'm being followed," Sean thought. An unpleasant lump of fear and anger stirred in my chest. He turned sharply into the supermarket parking lot, got out of the car, and looked around. The SUV drove past and disappeared. Maybe it really is a coincidence, he tried to reassure himself. Returning home, he cautiously checked all the doors and windows and placed a saddlebag at the back door. The house is still in order apparently. No new guests have visited. Late in the evening, as Sean was getting ready to lie down on the sofa, his cell phone rang. Tony's number. Sean replied. "Yes, Tony, what?" But there was a noise on the phone, the sound of a fall, and then a strange voice. "Listen here, Kelly. Your friend doesn't know how to keep his nose to his business. If you don't stop digging, he could get seriously hurt." Sean went cold. "Where is Tony? What did you do to him?" "Nothing yet, but we have it. And if you don't come to your senses, they'll break a couple of his bones." "Listen," Sean breathed out, feeling a chilling horror for his friend. "Let him go. He has nothing to do with it. Everyone has a problem when they go where they weren't invited." "Damn you," Sean began, but the connection was interrupted. He remained standing with the phone in his hand, his heart beating. "Tony got in because of me," flashed. A second later, I remembered that it was today that the two of them were wandering around Milwaukee asking questions. Someone was watching and found Tony. The night turned out to be restless. After an exhausting search and futile attempts to find a trace of Jay, Sean Kelly returned home in the morning as if barely alive. Fatigue drove him into a dead end, his muscles ached, and his head was pounding. He tossed and turned on the couch, thinking intensely about Tony. After all, Tony was the only close friend who understood what Sean was going through. And now both of them have been dragged into some kind of dirty story, full of threats and blackmail. In the morning, closer to 7, Sean still got up and mechanically made coffee. He understood. The day promised to be hard and long. He was distracted from his bitter thoughts by the ringing of his mobile phone. The screen lit up with an unfamiliar number. "Hello?" Sean picked up the phone, holding the steaming mug in his trembling hand. Silence. Then a short exhale was heard, and suddenly Tony's voice. "Sean, it's me." Sean's heart sank. "Tony, where are you? What's wrong with you?" "I'm fine. More or less, the friend's voice was weak, as if it was interrupted. They let me go. What do you mean, released? Sean exhaled shakily. Where are you? I'll come for you. Here, on the side of the road, near the old highway in motel. I need to go to the hospital. Sean almost dropped his coffee mug. The main thing is that Tony is alive. Listen, don't hang up. Sean grabbed his jacket and keys. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Okay? I'll try to move away from the road, find a place where I can sit. Don't make sudden movements. Sean barked. I'll be there soon. He rushed into the pickup truck, not caring that he hadn't gotten enough sleep and looked like a zombie. Turning on the ignition, Sean rushed through the wet streets, spewing curses at all the traffic lights that came under the wheels. When he finally arrived at the designated location, a small roadside inn with a shabby sign, he saw Tony leaning against a lamppost. Friend, Sean said quietly, running up to him. Tony, damn it, I'm sorry. Come on, Tony tried to smile. It's not your fault. I myself knew what I was getting into. Who did this? Sean carefully led his friend to the car. Two types of masks. They attacked me at the entrance. I didn't have time to understand anything. Tony sighed, getting into the pickup truck. Then they brought me to some room and tied me up. Their main one is this Jay, or someone on his behalf. I definitely didn't see the face, but he asked about you. About me. Sean clenched the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. What exactly? He told you to stop digging and hand over the documents that you wanted to give to Carrie. And I, they say, am a hostage if you don't come to your senses. Sean swore. But then they decided. Tony winced, remembering the events. Apparently, they decided that I wasn't needed. Or they thought that I was of no use anyway. Left here. Damn bastards. Sean started the engine. Tony, hold on. I'll take you to the emergency room now. Okay. Half an hour later, they were at the regional hospital. The doctor on duty took Tony into the dressing room. While he was being examined, Sean sat in the corridor and thought. What to do next? He has no confirmation that J, indeed a certain James K, and he probably could have already changed his car, number, even city. Police? But then Carrie risks. A phone call brought him out of his thoughts. Again, an unfamiliar number, but this time a female voice. Mr. Kelly? Carrie woke up. What? Sean suddenly felt his heart speed up. Has she come to her senses? Yes. Sean jumped up. I'm going there right now. He jumped out of the corridor and saw a doctor coming out of the dressing room. Doc, what's wrong with your friend? He needs rest and Roman 4. Let's leave it for a day. Can I go away for a while? Sean exhaled. No, everything will be fine, the doctor nodded. Thank you. Sean rushed away, calling Tony to at least say a few words. Tony answered in a hushed voice. Well, how is it there? Friend, the doctor said that everything is not so bad with you. Listen, Carrie woke up. I'm going to St. Joseph's Hospital immediately. Carrie? Wow. Tony cleared his throat. Sean, don't cut rashly. Find out what she has to say. If someone blackmailed her. I understand. Get better. I'll come back to you. Okay? And Sean, be careful. Stopping his breathing for a second, Sean went out into the parking lot, started the pickup, and stepped on the gas. In the intensive care unit, a nurse gestures. You can come in. Carrie, Sean said quietly, approaching. She blinked slowly, as if trying to focus her eyes. Sean. She breathed out, barely audible. Sean put his hand on her arm, feeling a strange trembling either from excitement or from fear. Can you hear me? He asked, leaning over. Yes, she breathed. The eyes focused slightly. My head hurts. Quiet. Don't tense up. The doctors say you have a spinal fracture, but they saved your life. Carrie looked at him, and her gaze suddenly reflected the awareness of some kind of pain, not only physical, but also mental. What? What happened? She closed her eyes slightly. The last thing I remember, I was driving. Rain. Sean hesitated for a moment. Should I tell her everything now, or wait until she gets stronger. But the memories of what was found in the phone about Jay, about the accident, everything was mixed into a bitter lump. Carrie, he said in a harsher tone than he intended, you better tell the truth. I already know that you ended up on 294 for a reason. Her face trembled, her pupils dilated. She opened her mouth slightly, as if trying to answer, but then the door of the room opened slightly, and a doctor entered. Dr. Ramirez. Mr. Kelly, please have a few words, he said quietly but firmly. Sean glanced at Carrie. I'll be back soon. She barely nodded, looking after him. In the hallway, Ramirez pulled Sean aside. She came to her senses, but her condition is still serious. Due to a spinal injury, she has very limited mobility. The legs don't move. You were talking about paralysis, Sean said heavily, feeling the cold creeping inside. Unfortunately, that's where everything is going. But she miraculously survived, and her brain functions are restored. The spinal cord is damaged, but the arms are likely to retain at least some mobility. Sean ran his hand over his face. It's clear. A stroller is waiting for her. Yes, at least. Rehabilitation may be lengthy, but it is important to have close people nearby. She needs moral support. Ramirez looked closely at Sean. Sean pursed his lips slightly and nodded silently, but emotions were boiling inside him. Sean silently entered the room. Carrie lay with her head thrown back on the pillow, her eyes half closed. Hearing footsteps, she turned her gaze, now conscious, clearer. Sean. He sat down on a chair nearby. He remained silent for several seconds, feeling that the words were stuck in his throat. Finally, he spoke. Carrie, I know that you were blackmailed by someone, Jay. I have your phone number. I saw the correspondence. He demanded money and some documents from the office from you. She pursed her lips and tears welled up in her eyes. Please tell me the truth. Sean's voice broke into a hoarse whisper. We've been together for 12 years, damn it. I deserve it. Carrie began to breathe faster, and the veins stood out on her neck. It was clear how difficult it was for her to speak out loud, both physically and mentally. Jay, she muttered, as if rolling the name in her mouth. His name is James Collins. Sean tensed. James Collins, how do you know him? She looked away, tears running down her cheeks. A long time ago, even before I met you, he was my first love. Then I thought it was love, but he turned out to be a bastard. I left when I found out that Carrie paused and closed her eyes, as if not daring to continue. What are you? What? Sean squeezed her hand, not knowing what he was afraid of hearing. That I'm pregnant, she whispered. I didn't know what to do. He disappeared, and then I lost the child at an early stage. Everything was terrible. Sean slowly lowered his shoulders. I didn't expect such a turn. I left to forget everything, and then I met you, and it was happiness. She sobbed. But he reappeared a few months ago. Came to the office of our company as an intermediary, JK Consulting. We ran into each other in the corridor. He recognized me, and I recognized him. Sean sat there, stunned. At first, he simply said that he was glad to see you again, and let's have coffee, Carrie continued. I can't explain why, but I agreed. He got me drunk. I couldn't resist. I panicked. You mean you had an affair? Sean felt his chest tighten. No, I didn't want to. He then showed photos, videos. He said that if I don't help him with this Harper and Green deal, he will show everything to you, to everyone. He will say that I am his mistress. Silence reigned in the room, interrupted only by the sounds of medical equipment. Sean looked at his wife, not believing that all this was happening. Blackmail with an intimate recording, participation in fraud. He didn't just want documents, Carrie whispered. He needed evidence of money laundering. At first, I thought that he only wanted to find out the details, but it turned out that he was playing a double game. On the one hand, he was helping Harper and Green complete a dubious deal, and on the other hand, he was going to blackmail them or sell data to competitors. And he got me into it. And the money? Sean asked, feeling bitter. He demanded that I pay him for silence. I wanted $50,000. I tried to find, take advances, cut our savings, and this turned out to be not enough. Every time he upped the ante, threatened to send you the recording, post it online. Sean closed his eyes. Now everything fell into place. Why she was delayed, why she was looking for a part-time job, why she went out of town on the sly, and perhaps why that accident happened. She was running away from this blackmail and lost control. And yet you met him that evening. Sean said a little louder. Yes, Carrie admitted through tears. I had to give the remaining money and some part of the documentation. He said he would then destroy all copies of the video. But I'm sure he won't stop. He's greedy as hell. So, after Joe's Cafe, I got on the highway and wanted to go further to Milwaukee. He appointed a meeting place there at the cinema. Rain, nerves. I lost control. I don't remember the rest. There was a heavy pause. Carrie didn't take her eyes off him, and Sean sat with his fists clenched, feeling everything turn over in his chest. I'm sorry, Sean, she whispered, desperation and guilt in her voice. I didn't know what to do. I was in despair, afraid of losing you, everything we have. He didn't answer. He stood up, breathing heavily, and walked around the room. He looked at his wife again. Her face was distorted with pain, not only from the injury, but also from the understanding that everything had been revealed. He didn't know what to say. Sean, she suddenly spoke, gaining strength. I understand that I ruined everything. But I beg you, give me a chance to explain everything, to fight back against that bastard James. He must be punished. Sean clenched his jaw. Punished? Of course. But what next? She didn't answer. She just sobbed, biting her lip. A few minutes later, Sean walked out into the corridor, where Susan was already waiting for him. He had previously sent her an SMS. She asked worriedly, Well, how? What did Carrie say? Sean ran his hand through his hair wearily. She confirmed everything. Jay. This is her old connection, which she was very afraid of. He blackmailed her with an intimate recording and got her involved in real estate fraud. Susan turned pale. Lord, so what now? I need to find this guy, Sean answered sharply. Bring to account. And Carrie, let her recover for now. Are you going to play detective again? Susan asked quietly. It's dangerous. It couldn't be more dangerous. My friend Tony almost died. Carrie was in a coma and now partially paralyzed. I can't stay away. Susan squeezed his hand. Then let me help. I can search the office files for this James Collins' contact information. Maybe his data surfaced somewhere. Yes, do it, Sean nodded, feeling grateful. And one more thing, be careful. Price may get nervous if he realizes that you are digging further. Susan sighed heavily. I will risk it for Carrie and for you. Thank you. Sean was sincerely touched by her willingness. At that moment, Sean's phone rang. The number is the same as before, hidden. He tensely pressed the device to his ear. Yes, you're too slow, Sean Kelly, came a cold male voice, in which Sean instantly recognized the mocking notes of Jay. What's the point of walking in circles? Your friend Tony has already realized that I'm not joking. Maybe you want your wife to suffer too. Sean grabbed the phone tighter, anger and pain mixed into an explosive cocktail. Listen, you bastard. No, listen to this. You have only one option. Give me all the papers that Carrie managed to collect and another $100,000 in compensation. Otherwise, I will make your family a laughingstock. I will put a spicy video on public display. Yes, and Harper and Green, if they wish, can make things worse for both of you. Sean closed his eyes, feeling the blood pounding in his temples. Carrie didn't give me anything. Even if they were destroyed during the accident, I know that she made copies. She's not stupid. Find them, or it will be worse. Where and when should I tell you? At midnight, in an abandoned warehouse off Route 98. You will find him. Bring everything. Where will I get 100,000 in one day? Sean shouted angrily. Your problems, said the voice. You can mortgage the house, sell the car. I don't care. Midnight. The connection has been lost. Sean remained standing, trembling with rage. Susan whispered with concern in her eyes. Did he demand money? Yes, and the documents. Sean ran his hand over his face. Now it's clear to me why he needed Carrie. He wanted to make deals, blackmail her, and apparently fleece all parties. Will you go to him? Sean sighed. He wanted to shout, "No, of course not." But he understood that this was a chance to squeeze Jay to the wall. I'll go, but not to pay. I want to put him away. After leaving the hospital, Sean stopped next to a pickup truck. The wind ruffled his hair. The asphalt was still wet from the night rain. Tony's advice came to mind. Contact the police. Sean took out his phone and dialed the number of Officer Davis, the one who was in charge of the accident case. It was risky because Davis suspected that Carrie was involved in something illegal, but there was no other way. Hello, Officer Davis. This is Sean Kelly. Mr. Kelly, do you remember anything? Sean exhaled heavily. I want to tell you what I learned, but the condition, you guarantee that you will not arrest my wife. She is a victim of blackmail. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Let's meet and talk, Davis finally said. At least state the facts. Great. Where? I can drop by the McBride's Cafe near the police station in half an hour. Okay, I'll be there. Sean's insides were filled with anxiety, but he understood that he needed to act quickly. Half an hour later, Sean was already sitting in a small cafe with wooden walls and black and white photographs on the walls. At the table opposite sat Davis in a uniform jacket, with obvious tension on his face. Yes, Mr. Kelly, I'm listening to you. Sean, after a moment, laid out everything point by point about James Collins, Carrie's first love, the video, blackmail, the Harper Green deal. He also told me about the call demanding $100,000. I understand. Davis frowned. It turns out, if all this is true, Collins is a fraudster who framed not only your wife, but also the Willow Price Company. He can blackmail them too. Yes, and now he made an appointment with me at midnight. He wants money and documents. Will you make contact? I have nowhere to go. I want you to catch him red-handed. Sean clenched his fist on the table. I can't collect that amount, and I don't want to pay him a cent. Davis pondered this for a moment, tapping his fingers on the table. Look, Mr. Kelly, officially, I cannot organize an operation without sufficient evidence. But he leaned closer and lowered his voice. I know a couple of colleagues who can help privately. If we catch Collins red-handed by recording his extortion, we'll have enough to apprehend him. Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to achieve. Sean looked into his eyes. But please don't do anything that will harm Carrie. She's already like that. I understand. She will most likely be called as a witness, and there may be a trial based on documents. But if she really is a victim of blackmail, then the court will take this into account. Sean thought bitterly that even if Carrie avoided prison, they would have to go through a public discussion of her connection with the criminal. But there was no choice. Okay, Davis made a note in his notebook. Send me the address of the warehouse where Collins made an appointment. The guys and I will arrive earlier, hide and wait. You will have to play the role of a freedom buyer in order for him to open up. I understand, Sean nodded, feeling how everything was shrinking inside. He will have to stand alone against Jay, looking him in the eye. Only without amateur performances, Mr. Kelly. Collins could be dangerous. If he has accomplices, he must be careful. Yes, I will do everything as you say. Davis handed him another detective's business card. Contact him, agree on the details. I will need to warn my boss, but without publicity. Let's try to do everything quietly. Sean took the business card and exhaled with relief. Finally, he was not alone in this fight. Time passed painfully slowly. Sean went home, ate quickly, then checked all his pockets and backpack. He looked carefully to see if there were any bugs or anything else after his window was broken in. He became suspicious of everything. He pulled out some paper folders that imitated documents. He tied them with an elastic band to make them look like classified materials. It's 11 o'clock at night. Sean got into the pickup truck and headed towards Route 98. His heart was uncomfortable. He remembered Carrie's face, her confession, and tears. What will happen to us next? He thought, feeling his heart ache. The weather was nasty. Chilly wind, light drizzle. The lights along the route were dim. Somewhere off to the side, dogs were howling. Finally, he saw the black outlines of an abandoned warehouse, a large one-story building made of rusty metal, surrounded by sparse weeds. Sean stopped on the side of the road and checked his phone to see if there was a message from Davis. He wrote that, "We are already there. Stick to the plan." Further, no details, so as not to highlight the operation. I hope they're really here, Sean thought, swallowing thickly. Otherwise, it will be suicide. He got out of the pickup truck, holding a package of documents under his arm, and walked hesitantly towards the warehouse. The silence around pressed on my ears like a vacuum. Dark windows, boarded-up doors. Sean walked to the side entrance, where a dim light flickered. "Hey," he called, trying to imitate a confident tone. "I've come." The door opened slightly. A weak beam of a flashlight came out from inside, sliding across Sean's face, and a hoarse voice said, "Events." Sean entered and found himself in a large empty room, a concrete floor, sparse metal shelving along the walls. Water was dripping somewhere. A black sedan stood against the far wall, with two men next to it. One was wearing a hat, the second was tall, fair-haired, wearing a gray jacket. "Jay." "So that's what you are," Sean said, looking with hatred at the figure of the one he assumed to be James Collins. The guy in the hat stepped forward, putting out his hand. "Stop. Place the bag on the ground, and show me what's in your pockets." Sean exhaled loudly. He knew that there must be officers somewhere in the darkness, but he did not notice any movement. "Where is the money?" The familiar mocking voice of Jay rang out. "You know, I need 100,000. Sean pretended to try to control himself. "The money is in my car. I didn't bring them here until I saw that you deleted all copies of the videos." "Deleted?" Jay laughed. "You're completely naive, Kelly. Such things are not removed. This is an excellent level of pressure." Sean tensed. "Then what are we talking about? I won't give you a cent until I'm sure." "You're not in a position to dictate terms," Jay interrupted ominously. He took a step forward, and the moonlight finally fell on his face. High cheekbones, cold gray eyes, a thin line of lips. "I've already shown your friend who's boss here. Do you want to repeat?" Sean was silent. My heart was pounding so hard that it seemed like the entire warehouse was vibrating. He just squeezed the bag of papers tighter. "Here are the documents Carrie collected. Harper Green deal, account statements." "Great," Jay squinted. "Come closer, show me." Sean stepped a couple of meters. A man in a hat stood opposite, with his hand under his jacket, possibly on a pistol. Sean saw him looking sideways with hostility. "Open it," ordered Jay. Sean unfastened his elastic band and showed some papers. "Jay." He grabbed the top sheet and tried to look at it. There didn't seem to be enough light, because he motioned for his partner with a flashlight. "Something is not enough. Are you sure that's all?" "What Carrie found is what it is," Sean shrugged, trying not to look at the trunk that could appear from under his jacket. "But where is the money?" "I said, in the car," Sean repeated. "Let's go, I'll show you." Jay grinned. "No, really. Let your gray friend come with you and check it out, and I'll stay here." Sean realized that the gray one was the guy in the hat. He was confused for a moment. In this case, they would be separated, and the police would not be able to catch everyone at once, and they might even miss the actual leader if he decided to escape. "Hey, Jay," Sean said, deliberately boldly, "don't you want to see for yourself that my money is real?" He raised an eyebrow. "I have very little time, Kelly." "Okay, come on, just quickly." They went outside. The wind increased. Sean walked slightly ahead, with Jay behind him, and a guy in a hat who periodically looked around. Sean stopped near the pickup and threw the keys on the hood. Open it yourself, there's a suitcase there. Smart, Jay nodded to his partner. He came up, inserted the key, opened the driver's door, and turned on the flashlight in the cabin. Sean held his breath because it was at this moment, by agreement with Davis, that the police should appear. The seconds dragged on endlessly. Partner Jay. He took out an empty case from under the seat and opened it. There's no money here. What? Jay rushed forward and looked at Sean in rage. You decided to deceive me. Sean swallowed the lump. Where the hell are these cops? You thought I'd bring you real money? He blurted out, realizing that there was no turning back. The face of Jay is distorted. At the same moment, a cry was heard. Police, hands up. Several figures in body armor rushed from the flanks, and flashlights appeared from around the corner of the warehouse. Jay cursed and rushed back into the warehouse. His partner first hesitated, looking at Sean, then also rushed around the corner, only from the other side. Stand, the cops yelled. To the ground. Sean, without hesitation, ducked behind the pickup to avoid being hit by stray shots. He saw one of Davis's officers chasing Jay, and two others rushing after the second, who was running around the warehouse. Kelly, get down. One of the police shouted to him, and Sean obeyed, pressing himself against the wet asphalt. Sean froze in horror, but then he heard someone shout, "Detained," and a din of voices rose up. That's it, get up. The officer ran up to Sean and patted him on the shoulder. We took him. It seems like the second one, too. Sean stood up and brushed himself off, feeling his knees shaking from adrenaline. Two detainees were brought out from behind the warehouse in handcuffs. Strong lights illuminated their distorted faces. Bastard, he said when he saw Sean. Yes, you. Shut up. The detective interrupted him, pushing him towards the patrol car. Sean came closer, looking at the detainee. It seemed that he saw everything in him: fear, anger, and contempt. Get lost, Sean said quietly. Jay. He only spat at his feet, but the policeman immediately put the criminal under siege and put him in the car. Mr. Kelly, are you okay? One of the officers asked. Yes, he croaked. Thank you for being on time. It's a pity that we couldn't take him directly with the money, but we have a recording of the negotiations. Your phone was recording too, right? Yes, I turned on the recorder as requested. Sean showed the device in his breast pocket. The officer nodded. Wonderful. This is enough to prove extortion. Sean wiped the sweat from his brow. Finally, this nightmare may be over. Later, when the police completed the necessary paperwork at the arrest site, Sean gave a formal statement and signed the report. Dawn was already dawning outside. Sean sat in his pickup truck, completely empty, both mentally exhausted and physically exhausted. He recalled everything that had happened over the past 2 days: Tony's kidnapping, an attempt to meet with Jay, threats, blackmail, and most importantly, Carrie's confession. Yes, he got rid of the scumbag who was ruining their lives, but could this get their marriage back on track? Frames popped up in my memory, as if in fast forward. Laughing Carrie, whom he once met in a seedy bar. Their small wedding, to which only close friends were invited. Her happy look when they bought a house. And now her tear-stained face, the memory of how another man achieved a connection from her. Damn, Sean whispered, lowering his head on the steering wheel. A few days later, Sean was called to the police station, where Officer Davis and representatives from the prosecutor's office were already present. Carrie was also invited in a wheelchair, accompanied by a nurse. She was discharged from intensive care to a lighter department, but she underwent rehabilitation mainly sitting or lying down. Several people gathered in a small meeting room. There were papers on the table, among them arrest reports. So, Mrs. Kelly, began the middle-aged prosecutor with glasses. You are suspected of illegal access to confidential documents of the Willow Price Company and possible complicity in fraudulent schemes. What can you say? Carrie sat with her hands folded in her lap, her eyes downcast, pale, haggard. Sean watched her from the other end of the table. It hurt him to watch this, but he could not do anything. I admit that I copied documents, Carrie said quietly, looking at the prosecutor. But she did it under pressure. I was blackmailed by James Collins. He threatened to distribute an intimate video and compromise my marriage. I was afraid. Did you receive money for this? No. On the contrary, I myself gave him the money so that he would not send the recording to my husband and other people. The prosecutor wrote something down on his notepad. Fine. Given that Collins himself appears to have been primarily responsible for the money laundering, and that you acted under pressure, we will consider mitigating circumstances. But in any case, your company, Willow Price, may bring a civil suit against you. Carrie gripped the armrests of the stroller, pressing her lips together nervously. I will accept any court decision. Sean stood against the wall, arms crossed over his chest, feeling a lingering bitterness. Carrie, you have driven yourself into a trap and me into hell, he thought. But he only said out loud. She was hurt. I can confirm that she was blackmailed. We take all evidence into account, the prosecutor nodded. The investigation is ongoing, but given the evidence, Collins is highly likely to receive a prison sentence. The meeting lasted about an hour, and after all this, Carrie was released on her own recognizance. Sean saw how she was trembling from tension and instinctively wanted to come over and support her. But something in him was breaking, blocking the previous warm feelings. After leaving the office, the two of them remained in the corridor. Carrie brought her hand to her eyes, trying to blink away the tears. Sean, she muttered, thank you. He lowered his eyes. I did what I thought was necessary. She smiled bitterly. You know, I understand that I ruined everything. If you want, I'm ready to do anything. Get a divorce, disappear from your life, if necessary. Sean clenched his fists until his nails dug painfully into his palms. 1,000 thoughts began to pound in my head. Yes, I want everything to be as before. No, I cannot forgive betrayal. Yes, she is a victim. No, it's her fault. Not now, he barely managed to squeeze out. First, sort out your health. You still need to arrange your care. She nodded, silently looking at the floor. The weeks passed. Carrie was transferred from one clinic to another, where she underwent rehabilitation. My legs never regained feeling. According to doctors, her chance to walk is minimal, and if she does, it will only be with long and expensive therapy, including surgery. Sean visited her almost every day at first, but there was a wall of silence between them. He brought fruit, organized payment of bills, and sometimes helped transfer from bed to stroller. Carrie tried to talk, asked to forgive her, begged. Sean, I understand everything. I loved you. I love it. And I understand that you will not be able to look at me as before. He just shook his head. There is no need to talk about this now. And inside him, conflicting emotions were raging. Pity, pain, resentment, anger at Collins, at Carrie, at himself. And every time he saw her helpless in a stroller, fragments of that same correspondence on the phone, the words, I can't now, my husband is home, appeared before his eyes. Another half-month passed. Carrie was in one of the city rehabilitation clinics. Sean, having returned from work and finally taken on several construction projects so as not to go crazy from idleness, decided to visit her in the late afternoon. When he entered the room, Carrie was sitting by the window in a stroller, looking out onto the street. The quiet splash of rain on the windowsill could be heard. Sean's footsteps sounded, and she turned around. Oh, hi, she said tiredly. I thought you wouldn't come today. Sean put the bag of fruit on the nightstand. How are you? She shrugged her shoulders and bowed her head. Physically, a little better. I can sometimes transfer myself from the stroller to the bed, but I can't feel my legs. Sean sank into a chair and exhaled. I won't beat around the bush, Carrie. I thought for a long time about everything, about us. She looked at him with inner alarm, her lips pursed slightly. And what conclusion did you come to? You see, Sean ran his hand over his face, searching for words. If it weren't for this accident, if everything hadn't been revealed, you would have continued to deceive me. She raised her head. Sean, I'm confused. I know, his voice sounded dull. But the fact remains, you cheated on me. Under the influence of alcohol, under pressure, it doesn't matter. You went to meet him, and our life will never be the same. Carrie sobbed, tears flowing from her eyes. Are you leaving? He silently clenched his knees, struggling with himself. You need constant help and care, he finally said. But I can't live anymore with a man who, you know, I can't look at you without pain. We have become strangers. She covered her face with her hands. God, Sean. They sat for several minutes, immersed in tragic silence. Only the sound of rain outside the window reminded me of the outside world. I won't leave you on the street, he continued in an even voice. I found a social institution for you that helps people in this situation. Comfortable conditions, medical staff, possibility of rehabilitation. I'll pay for everything. Social institution, she asked dully, removing her hands from her face. You want me to be placed there like an unnecessary doll? Sean clenched his jaw painfully. Don't say that. You need daily care. I have to work. I don't have the opportunity to sit with you around the clock, and I can't afford to hire a 24-hour nurse financially. Is that all? After 12 years together? Her voice turned to a whisper. Her face was distorted by agony. Stop. You yourself understand. I can't now. Forgive and live as if nothing happened. Maybe over time everything will be different. I don't know. But now I want to leave. She moaned softly, looking at him with tear-filled eyes. Is this your revenge? This is not revenge. I just can't stand it. I love you in my own way, but the pain does not allow me to live. Carrie bowed her head to her knees, and her shoulders shook in silent crying. Sean stood up, walked over, wanted to touch her shoulder, but his hand froze in the air. I'm sorry, he whispered. She didn't answer. She just sobbed. The next day, Sean completed the paperwork, transferring Carrie from the rehabilitation center to a private social boarding house for the disabled and people with disabilities. The place was good quiet, with professional staff, a green courtyard, and convenient ramps. But the very thought of it tore his soul. Before leaving, he helped her get ready. Things, warm sweaters, favorite books. She looked at him with red eyes, saying almost nothing. When the orderly, a young guy, transferred her from the hospital wheelchair to a special car, Sean stood next to her like a pillar. Everything will be fine, Sean muttered, realizing that these words sound empty. The car started moving, taking her to a new world where Sean wouldn't be around. He stood and looked after her, not noticing how tears appeared in his own eyes. Months passed. The trial of James Collins is over. He was given an impressive sentence for fraud, extortion, and blackmail. Harper and Green, fearing a scandal, also received their legal consequences, although they hired expensive lawyers to reduce their sentences. Carrie did not incur criminal liability, since she was recognized as a victim of coercion and blackmail, but Willow Price recovered a certain amount from her for violating confidentiality. Sean paid off this debt, realizing that Carrie had nothing to pay herself. They did not file an official divorce. Sean and Carrie simply stopped living together. She was still in a social institution where she was provided with care and recovery procedures. Sean continued to work, sometimes visiting the boarding house, bringing necessary things, and drawing up contracts for treatment. They saw each other, exchanging only polite phrases, sometimes a little warm, but without the same intimacy. One cloudy autumn day, Sean, having finished inspecting a new construction site, got into a pickup truck and leaned back on the seat. A gloomy sky was visible through the rain-stained glass. He pulled out an old photograph of him and Carrie laughing in a bar, holding hands. That was the time when he truly considered himself a knight and her his princess. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.